Today is section 6.7, the quadratic equation. We are going to use the formula on the board to solve our quadratic equations just like we had used completing the square to solve our quadratic equations. So go ahead and write that equation down, and we will start with number 1. First, we're going to have to identify the values of A, B, and C. So let's do that. For number 1, my A value, the coefficient of x squared is 1. My B value, the coefficient of x is 2. And my C value, the coefficient that's by itself, or the constant I should say, is -4. Now let's plug that into our equation so that we can solve for x. Notice that with this plus or minus, we're going to end up with 2 values most of the time, just like we did completing the square. So first of all, a negative b value would be a -2, plus or minus b squared. I'm going to replace that with 2 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is a -4. And I'm going to divide that by 2 times a, which is 1. Now let's go ahead and simplify. I get -2 plus or minus 2 squared is 4, minus 4 times 1 is 4, times -4 is a -16, all over 2 times 1, which is 2. Now let's simplify. When I'm subtracting a negative, I'm actually doing what? Adding a positive. So let's change it to 4 plus 16. And simplify what's inside that square root. Now I have x equals a -2 plus or minus the square root of 20 all over 2. In my final step, I'm going to simplify my square root. And 20, I actually know, is the 4 times 5. So that 4, I can square root and bring out as a factor of 2. And I get -2 plus or minus 2. I square root that 4 and leave it as a factor times the square root of 5, all over 2. Now in my final step, I notice that 2 will go into both of these terms, and I have x equals a -1 plus or minus the square root of 5. All right, once you're done working that out, let's go ahead and start with number 2. We are going to need to identify our A, B, and C values. And while I erase this last example, go ahead and do that for me. All right, in number 2, we're solving for P. And my A value should be 3. My B value should be a -4, and my C value should be 2. Let's plug into this equation right here. And I get P equals a -B, which is a -4 in our case, which is a +4. Plus or minus, my B squared is going to be a -4 squared, minus 4 times A, which is 3, times C, which is 2, all divided by 2 times 3. In my next step, when I simplify, I get a -4 squared, becomes a +16, minus 12 times 2 is 24, all over 6. So hopefully what we notice here is that we're ending up with a negative square root. With a negative square root, do I have any real number solutions? And the answer is that I absolutely do not. That means that in this graph, my graph could be up here or down here. It doesn't cross the x-axis. And so whenever you end up with a quadratic equation with no real solutions, that means that graphically it never crosses the x-axis. Since my leading coefficient here is a +3, I know it would have to be some situation up here. All right, let's go ahead and look at number 3. The only problem with number 3 is that it's not yet solved for 0. I'd like to go ahead and do that. Let's subtract 2 on both sides. And now we're simply going to identify A, B, and C. My A value is 1, my B value is -3, and my C value is a -2. Since I've already done 2 from that stage on, I'm not going to do it again. I would like you guys to try number 3, taking it from this point for me for tomorrow. Number 4, if I'm in this stage, first I would need to set up each factor equal to 0. Don't we notice that here, we don't have to use this quadratic equation at all. This already fully factored equal to 0. Set up each factor equal to 0 and solve. Here b equals 0 or b equals 10. All right, bring in number 3 and I will see you tomorrow.